In the bustling city of Los Angeles, where skyscrapers kissed the smog-filled sky and the hum of life never ceased, Barron found himself drawn into a whirlwind of uncertainty. The once pristine air was now thick with ash, the aftermath of devastating wildfires that had swept through the surrounding hills. Streets buzzed with murmurs of speculation, yet none had the courage to seek the truth. Barron knew he couldn't turn away. He had always been a curious soul. At 24, Barron had graduated top of his class in environmental studies. But unlike his peers who pursued careers in academia or activism, he craved the thrill of uncovering hidden truths. His father, Donald Trump, often joked about his insatiable curiosity, but even he couldn't have foreseen where it would lead. The fires had been raging for weeks, consuming thousands of acres, destroying homes and displacing families. Official reports blamed climate change and dry weather conditions, but Barron sensed something deeper. There was a pattern to the destruction, strategic, almost calculated. One evening, while visiting a local shelter to volunteer, Barron's attention was caught by an older woman with a look of distress etched across her face. "You seem troubled," he said gently, handing her a bottle of water. She hesitated, then spoke in a whisper. "I saw something. A drone. It hovered over my property just before the fire started." She nodded. It had a small canister attached underneath. "I reported it, but the authorities said they were too overwhelmed. No one cares." Her words struck a chord. Barron's mind raced with possibilities. Could someone be using drones to start these fires? The idea was audacious, yet plausible. He decided to investigate further. The name Solvista Holdings kept surfacing in conversations around the shelters. They were a major player in land development, and rumors swirled that they had been buying up scorched land for pennies on the dollar. That evening, Barron delved into the company's history. At the Los Angeles Public Library, he accessed corporate filings and news archives. Solvista's CEO, Victor Grayson, was a shadowy figure with a reputation for aggressive tactics. Lawsuits against him included illegal fracking and land contamination. Barron also uncovered a pattern. Solvista had pushed for redevelopment projects in wildfire-prone areas, lobbying to relax regulations after fires. The fires weren't just tragedies. They were opportunities for profit. If someone could clear large swaths of land quickly, they could rebuild at immense financial gain. It was a chilling thought, but one Barron couldn't ignore. As he gathered more evidence, a black SUV began appearing in his periphery. First, it was parked outside the library. Then, it trailed him as he left his apartment. Barron's instincts told him he was being watched. Barron knew he couldn't do this alone. He contacted Linda Moreno, an investigative journalist renowned for exposing corruption. After summarizing his findings in an encrypted email, she agreed to meet him at a cafe in Pasadena. Over coffee, Barron shared everything: the drone sightings, Solvista's shady practices, and Victor Grayson's history. Linda listened intently, her brow furrowing. "If this is true," she said, "we're dealing with something huge. But it's dangerous. People have disappeared for less." Their conversation was cut short by a loud crash outside. They turned to see a car speeding away, tires screeching. Linda's face grew pale. "That's no coincidence. We need to move." That night, Barron and Linda worked tirelessly to dig deeper. Linda's sources provided internal emails from Solvista revealing plans to expedite rebuilding permits in fire-affected areas. One email stood out, a message from Victor Grayson discussing accelerating the timeline and ensuring sites were cleared. The implications were staggering. Someone was intentionally starting the fires to force residents out and pave the way for redevelopment. But the closer they got to the truth, the more perilous their mission became. One evening, as Barron returned to his hotel, he found his room ransacked. Papers were scattered, drawers open, and his laptop missing. A single note lay on the desk: "Stop digging." Barron called Linda, who urged him to stay at her place until they figured out their next move. "They're trying to scare you," she said, "but this just confirms we're onto something." Despite the threats, they pressed on. Linda began drafting an exposé, weaving together the evidence they had gathered. But as the deadline approached, Barron couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The night before the article was set to publish, Barron received an encrypted email from an unknown sender. It contained an attachment labeled Proof of Operation Phoenix. The file included damning evidence, schematics for the drones, detailed plans for orchestrating the fires, and emails discussing payouts to complicit officials. The message ended with a chilling line, "Release this and you'll never see daylight again." Barron's hands trembled as he forwarded the file to Linda's editor. "The truth matters," he whispered to himself. The next morning the story broke. News outlets exploded with coverage of the scandal. Protests erupted outside Solvista's headquarters. Federal authorities launched investigations, and Victor Grayson became a symbol of corporate greed. But for Barron, the fight was far from over. His actions had ignited a firestorm of their own, one that would test his courage and resilience in ways he never imagined. As the world began to take notice, Barron prepared for the battle ahead, knowing that the truth and justice often came at a heavy price. Night had settled over the city, but Amara's mind refused to rest. Sitting at her desk with the glow of her laptop lighting up her determined face, she sifted through files she'd managed to salvage from the meteorological center. Her instincts told her she was onto something, but the pieces refused to fit together. Yet. Across the city, Dev sat in his dimly lit apartment, his own desk cluttered with maps, reports, and handwritten notes. Though their methods differed, their goals were aligned. They were chasing a truth hidden beneath layers of deception. The next morning, Amara and Dev met at a small cafe tucked away from the city's bustling streets. The cafe's quiet atmosphere offered a perfect backdrop for their increasingly complex investigation. Dev laid out a series of satellite images and old wildfire incident reports on the table. His expression was grim. "Look at these," he said, pointing to marked areas on the images. "These are the ignition points from the last 6 major wildfires in the region." Amara leaned in, her eyes narrowing as she studied the patterns. "They're almost too precise," she murmured. "Wildfires don't usually start like this." "Exactly," Dev replied, pulling out another report. "This one details wind patterns during one of the fires. It says the flames spread against the wind in some areas, completely unnatural behavior." Amara frowned. "You think it's deliberate?" Dev hesitated. "I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but after seeing these reports and digging into the financial activity around these areas..." He slid another document across the table. "Look at the land acquisitions." Amara scanned the page. It showed a company named Solvista Holdings buying up land in wildfire-affected areas at alarmingly low prices. "This can't be a coincidence," she said, her voice firm. As they left the cafe, Amara noticed a black SUV parked nearby. It hadn't been there when they arrived, and something about it felt off. "Don't look now," she whispered to Dev, "but I think we're being watched." Dev casually glanced around, catching sight of the vehicle. His jaw tightened. Let's not make it easy for them. They split up, agreeing to meet later that evening at a safer location. Amara walked briskly through the crowded streets, her heart pounding. She couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on her, even as she ducked into a busy subway station. Later that night, Dev arrived at their meeting point carrying a battered folder. He spread its contents across the table, emails, financial records, and internal memos from Solvista Holdings. "I got these from an anonymous source," he said, his voice low. "They show a deliberate effort to buy up land in wildfire zones. But here's the kicker. They were lobbying for zoning changes before the fires even started." Amara's stomach churned. "So they're planning these fires to clear the land and drive down property values?" "Looks that way," Dev said. "And Solvista isn't working alone. Some of these emails mentioned partnerships with local officials. They're trying to turn disaster into profit." Amara's determination hardened. "We have to expose this." The next day, Amara anonymously forwarded some of the documents to a journalist she trusted. The story was small at first, just a whisper on the fringes of the news cycle. But as more information trickled out, public outrage began to grow. Protests started forming outside Solvista's headquarters, and online forums buzzed with theories and speculation. The company issued a statement denying the allegations, but their carefully worded response only fueled suspicion. As the heat intensified, so did the danger. Amara received an unmarked envelope at her apartment. Inside was a single piece of paper with the words, "Stop digging, or you'll regret it." She showed it to Dev, who was equally unsettled. "They know we're onto them," he said. "We have to be careful." But Amara refused to back down. "If they're threatening us, it means we're getting close." Dev suggested bringing in Linda Moreno, a seasoned investigative journalist with a reputation for exposing corruption. Amara was hesitant that trust was a scarce resource, but she agreed. Linda joined their efforts with enthusiasm, using her connections to dig deeper into Solvista's operations. Together, the trio uncovered more damning evidence. Blueprints for drones capable of starting fires and internal emails discussing payouts to complicit officials. "This is huge," Lillian said, her voice trembling with a mix of excitement and fear. "But it's also dangerous. You two need to be ready for whatever comes next." As their investigation gained momentum, Solvista struck back. One evening, Amara returned home to find her apartment ransacked. Her files were gone, her laptop smashed, and a message scrawled on her wall. "You've been warned." Shaken but undeterred, she called Dev and Linda. "We need to secure the evidence we still have," she said. "They're trying to silence us." The trio decided to take the story to a national outlet, knowing it would attract even more attention and more danger. As they prepared to release their findings, Amara received another threat. "This is your last chance," the message read. "Walk away or face the consequences." Amara stared at the note, her hands trembling, but when she looked at Dev and Linda, she saw the same resolve in their eyes. "We've come too far to stop now," she said. And with that, they took the first step toward exposing the truth, unaware of just how high the stakes would rise.
Please comment and subscribe to the channel if you want more magical stories like this.
The faint glow of his laptop illuminating his determined expression. The evidence from Solvista Holdings had unraveled a chilling conspiracy, but it was only the tip of the iceberg. Despite the small victory of leaking the Operation Phoenix files, Barron knew the game was far from over. Victor Grayson, Solvista's elusive CEO, had vanished. The masterminds behind the fires weren't just corrupt. They were untouchable, operating in a world where power could buy silence. As Barron sifted through the files one more time, a new detail caught his eye. A nondescript invoice for equipment testing from a company called Helios Dynamics, a name that had come up in his earlier research. A quick search revealed the company specialized in advanced drone technology. The connection was undeniable. Determined to pursue this lead, Barron reached out to Linda Moreno's editor, Daniel Chase. Chase, a seasoned journalist, had taken over the investigation after Linda's disappearance. Meeting at a small discreet diner in the outskirts of the city, Barron laid out his findings. "Helios Dynamics isn't just any tech firm," Chase said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They've been tied to several government contracts, including surveillance and military-grade drones. If they're involved, this goes deeper than we thought." Barron's pulse quickened. "How do we prove it?" Chase slid a burner phone across the table. "We'll need a source inside Helios. There's someone I know, a former employee who turned whistleblower. Goes by the name Kai. They're off the grid, but still in touch with a few trusted contacts. If anyone can confirm Helios's involvement, it's them." Later that night, Barron received an encrypted message with coordinates and a single line. "Meet at the edge of the redwoods." He drove for hours, the dense forest eventually engulfing the narrow road. Parking his car, he followed a faint trail, flashlight in hand. The silence of the woods was oppressive, broken only by the crunch of his boots on dry leaves. A figure emerged from the shadows, their face obscured by a hood. "You must be Barron Trump," they said, voice distorted by a voice modulator. "Chase told me you'd come." Pride's knowledge was startling. They confirmed that Helios Dynamics had developed specialized drones capable of deploying incendiary devices with precision. The orders had been disguised as research projects for environmental impact studies. The company's true purpose? To execute targeted operations for Solvista Holdings and other shadowy clients. "I have the blueprints, the contracts, and internal emails," Kai said, "but exposing them will be dangerous. They have eyes everywhere." Barron's resolve hardened. "If we don't act, more lives will be destroyed." The next step was clear but perilous. Barron and Kai planned to infiltrate a Helios Dynamics facility to gather physical evidence. It was a heavily guarded compound, but Kai's insider knowledge provided a blueprint of the building and its security protocols. Under the cover of darkness, they approached the facility. Using a jammer, Kai disabled the outer perimeter cameras. They slipped inside, avoiding guards and motion detectors. Every step was calculated, every breath measured. Reaching the server room, Kai plugged in a USB device to extract the data. The download felt agonizingly slow. A sudden noise made Barron's heart stop. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Barron signaled Kai to hide, As a guard entered, flashlight sweeping the room, Barron's hand tightened around a metal rod he'd picked up earlier. Just as the guard turned toward their hiding spot, a distant alarm sounded. The guard cursed and left, giving them the precious seconds they needed to finish the download and escape. The data was explosive. It included schematics of the incendiary drones, records of test flights, and payments from shell companies tied to Solvista Holdings. There were even documents suggesting that key officials had been bribed to ignore fire safety violations and approve rebuilding permits. But amidst their triumphs, a chilling realization hit Barron. The deeper they dug, the more dangerous their mission became. As they reviewed the data in a safe house, Kai's phone buzzed with a cryptic message. "You've crossed the line. Leave now or face the consequences." The warning wasn't idle. That night, as Barron stepped outside to get fresh air, a black SUV roared down the street, its occupants firing warning shots. He barely managed to dive behind a parked car. The sound of screeching tires faded into the distance, but the message was clear. They were being hunted. Despite the threats, Barron refused to back down. He reached out to his father, Donald Trump, who had been quietly supporting him from behind the scenes. "Dad, this is bigger than I ever imagined. I need your connections and your protection." Donald's response was measured but firm. "You've done incredible work, Barron, but you're playing a dangerous game. I'll do what I can to shield you, but promise me you'll be careful." As the evidence mounted, Barron and Chase prepared to release a second exposé. This one would target not only Solvista Holdings, but also the corrupt officials and corporate allies enabling their operations. They knew this would be their boldest move yet, and possibly their last. The night before the story went live, Barron received an unexpected email from an anonymous source. It contained a video file showing Victor Grayson boarding a private jet in an undisclosed location. The sender claimed to have Grayson's exact coordinates but demanded something in return. A promise to expose not just Solvista, but the entire network of elites profiting from engineered disasters. Barron hesitated. Pursuing this lead could either dismantle the entire operation or put an even larger target on his back. But as he stared at the screen, he knew one thing. The fight for truth was far from over. The chill of uncertainty gripped Barron Trump as he sat in his dimly lit motel room, the laptop screen casting a faint glow over his face. Each keystroke echoed in the silence as he delved into the encrypted files Linda Moreno had secured before her disappearance. These files, combined with the evidence he had already gathered, painted a damning picture of Solvista Holdings' true ambitions. Yet, the deeper he went, the clearer it became, this was bigger than a single company. A map of California illuminated his screen, marked with wildfire hotspots and Solvista's recent land acquisitions. It was no coincidence. Each point aligned perfectly with areas previously devastated by fires. Overlaying this were municipal records, showing hasty rezoning approvals and lucrative contracts awarded to construction firms tied to Victor Grayson, Solvista's elusive CEO. But the most unsettling discovery lay buried in a folder labeled Phoenix Protocol. The documents outlined a sophisticated operation involving drone technology, chemical accelerants, and targeted ignition points. It wasn't just reckless, it was calculated arson. Even more shocking was an email chain between Grayson and several unnamed officials referencing Phase 2 and discussing timelines. Barron's heart raced. Phase 2? What could be worse than orchestrating fires for profit? Barrick's burner phone buzzed, breaking the silence. The message was brief and cryptic. "They're watching. Meet me at the pier at midnight. Come alone. Raven." He hesitated. Raven was a name Linda had mentioned once, an anonymous whistleblower with insider access to Solvista. Trusting this person was risky, but Barron had little choice. At midnight, he arrived at the desolate pier. The ocean waves crashed against the wooden beams, their sound masking the occasional creak of footsteps. A figure emerged from the shadows. A tall woman clad in a black trench coat, her face partially hidden by a hood. "You're brave to come," she said, her voice low but firm. "Or foolish?" "You're Raven," Barron asked. She nodded. "And you're the kid stirring the hornet's nest. Linda told me about you. Before she went dark, she sent me this." Raven handed Barron a USB drive. "It's the last piece of the puzzle. But you need to be careful. Solvista's reach goes deep. government contracts, law enforcement, even media outlets. Solvista smiled. Barron's grip on the USB tightened. What's on it? Proof of their endgame, Raven said. Phase 2 isn't just about land grabs, it's about reshaping entire cities. They're targeting key infrastructure, power grids, water supplies, transportation hubs. If they succeed, they'll control everything. The gravity of her words hit Barron like a freight train. Why are you helping me? Raven's expression softened. Because I've seen what they're capable of. And because Linda believed in you. Don't let her down. Their conversation was cut short by the low hum of engines. Barron turned to see 2 black SUVs approaching fast. Raven cursed under her breath. They found us. Run, she shouted, pulling Barron toward a side alley. The pier erupted into chaos. Men in tactical gear spilled out of the SUVs, shouting commands. Barron and Raven weaved through the narrow streets, their pursuers closing in. The sound of boots pounding against asphalt grew louder. Raven led Barron into an abandoned warehouse. This way, she whispered, guiding him toward a hidden staircase that descended into a maze of underground tunnels. The air was damp and cold, the walls covered in graffiti. Raven pulled out a flashlight, its beam slicing through the darkness. See, tunnels connect to an old subway line, she explained. We can lose them here. The sound of footsteps echoed above, then faded. Barron's breath came in gasps, his adrenaline surging. What now? Now we regroup, Raven said. But first, you need to see what's on that drive. Hours later, in a safe house deep in the city's outskirts, Barron plugged the USB into his laptop. The files were heavily encrypted, but Raven had provided a decryption key. As the data loaded, a series of videos, emails, and blueprints appeared on the screen. One video showed a private meeting between Grayson and a high-ranking official discussing plans to accelerate urban redevelopment. Another detailed the deployment of drones equipped with flamethrowers, their precision demonstrated in chilling test footage. But the most damning piece was a financial ledger tracking millions of dollars in bribes to politicians, law enforcement, and media executives. They've bought silence at every level, Barron muttered, his anger boiling. And they'll keep going unless we stop them, Raven said. This is bigger than a news story. It's a movement. We need to rally the public. Raven suggested broadcasting the evidence live, bypassing traditional media to reach people directly. Barron agreed, though he knew the risks. Using a secure platform, they scheduled the live stream for the following evening. As the hour approached, Barron's nerves were afraid. He rehearsed his speech, knowing it could be his last. Raven monitored the feed, ensuring their location remained hidden. When the stream went live, thousands tuned in within minutes. Barron's face filled the screen as he spoke. My name is Barron Trump, and I'm here to expose the truth. Solvista Holdings isn't just profiting from wildfires, they're orchestrating them. They've corrupted our leaders, endangered our communities, and prioritized greed over humanity. But we can stop them. Together we can demand accountability. He presented the evidence, letting the videos and documents speak for themselves. The response was immediate. Comments flooded in, hashtags trended, and outrage swept across social media. But Barron knew this was only the beginning. As the stream ended, the safehouse's power cut out. Raven grabbed her weapon. They're here. In the pitch-black room, Barron's fear surged. The walls trembled as an explosion rocked the building. Smoke filled the air and shouts echoed outside. Raven led Barron through a hidden exit, but their escape was far from assured. Pursued through the night, Barron's resolve hardened. He had ignited a spark, but the flames of resistance were only beginning to burn. Solvista would stop at nothing to silence him. But he was determined to see this through, no matter the cost. The cabin was quiet, save for the hum of Linda's laptop. Barron, Linda, and Marcus had spent the last 24 hours in a frenzy of planning, determined to pull off their most audacious move yet, exposing Solvista Holdings on a global scale. This isn't just about releasing evidence, Barron said, pacing the room. It's about hitting them where it hurts. We need to mobilize people, make sure the pressure doesn't let up. Linda nodded. We'll use a two-pronged approach. Public outcry and strategic leaks to trusted agencies and reporters worldwide. If they try to bury one, the others will keep it alive. Marcus, seated in the corner, looked uneasy. You realize they'll come after us even harder, right? This isn't just a fight anymore. It's a war. Barron stopped pacing and looked at Marcus. It's always been a war. The difference is, now we're fighting back. The network expands. Through Sarah Keller's extensive contacts, they connected with activists, journalists, and whistleblowers across the globe. The plan was simple but risky. Release a comprehensive dossier on Solvista's operations, complete with financial records, Marcus's testimony, and proof of their drone program's sinister purposes. To maximize impact, they coordinated with influential figures in tech, media, and environmental advocacy. Everyone involved understood the stakes. Exposing the truth could save countless lives, but it also painted targets on their backs. The first wave of leaks went live on a Monday morning, perfectly timed to dominate the news cycle. Headlines screamed. Direct greed fuels global destruction, the Solvista scandal. Fires, surveillance, and corruption inside Solvista's drone program. Former employee speaks out. They knew what they were doing. Within hours, social media was flooded with outrage. Videos and infographics explaining Solvista's schemes went viral, sparking protests in cities around the world. Activists chained themselves to Solvista offices, demanding accountability. Governments were forced to respond. Some announced investigations, while others faced backlash for their silence, fueling suspicions of complicity. Retaliation. Solvista struck back with the ferocity of a cornered predator. Their legal team issued threats, claiming the leaks were fabricated. They hired PR firms to spin the narrative, painting Barron and his team as criminals and conspiracy theorists. But the evidence was undeniable, and the public wasn't buying Solvista's denials. Then came the physical threats. One night, as Barron and his team worked late into the evening, a drone buzzed outside the cabin window. Marcus, familiar with Solvista's technology, immediately recognized it. "That's not a regular drone," he said, his face pale. "It's one of theirs." Barron grabbed a rifle from their emergency stash and took aim. The drone darted erratically, as if trying to evade his shot. He pulled the trigger and the drone crashed to the ground in a shower of sparks. Linda rushed to examine it. "They've escalated," she said, her voice tight. "This isn't just surveillance, it's armed." The safe house breach. The incident with the drone was just the beginning. Days later, they received an encrypted message from one of Sarah's contacts. "You're compromised. Leave immediately." Before they could act, the cabin was surrounded. Black SUVs pulled up and armed men poured out, their weapons trained on the house. "We need to move. Now," Barron said, his voice calm but urgent. Linda grabbed the hard drive containing all their evidence. Marcus stuffed a backpack with essential supplies. They slipped out through a hidden exit just as the attackers stormed the front door. A race against time. The trio fled into the dense forest, their pursuers close behind. Every step was a test of endurance and wit. Barron used his knowledge of the terrain to lead them through narrow trails and natural cover, staying one step ahead. When they finally reached the clearing, a helicopter waited, arranged by Sarah as a contingency plan. The pilot, a grizzled veteran, motioned for them to hurry. As the helicopter lifted off, Barron looked down at the armed men below. They were shouting into radios, clearly furious. "This isn't over," Linda said, clutching the hard drive. "No," Barron agreed, "but we've bought ourselves time." The final blow. From a secure location, Barron and his team launched their final strike, a live-streamed event featuring whistleblowers, journalists, and activists exposing Solvista's network. The stream was viewed by millions, with translations in multiple languages, ensuring the message reached every corner of the globe. Governments that had remained silent were forced to act. Arrests were made, investigations deepened, and Solvista's stock plummeted. But Barron knew the fight wasn't truly over. The people behind Solvista, the ones pulling the strings, were still out there. As the live stream ended, Barron addressed the viewers directly. "This isn't just about one company," he said. "It's about all of us standing up to greed, corruption, and the destruction of our planet. The fight doesn't end here, it starts here. Together, we can win." The screen went dark, but the impact of his words lingered. The world had woken up, but the fight was far from over. Solvista's operations had been disrupted, its public image shattered, and its key players exposed. Yet the shadowy figures who orchestrated the entire operation still held power, hidden behind layers of bureaucracy and influence. For Barron's, Linda, Marcus, and their growing network of allies, this was the moment to strike at the heart of the machine, unmasking the puppet masters. Linda worked tirelessly, sifting through terabytes of encrypted data extracted from Solvista's servers. With every breakthrough, the team came closer to identifying the individuals at the top, the true architects of the devastation. "Is it patterned?" Linda said one evening, her voice tinged with excitement. "Shell companies, offshore accounts, secret meetings. This isn't just a corporation, it's an entire web of power, reaching into governments, industries, and even law enforcement." "Shell companies?" Barron leaned over her shoulder, scanning the documents. "If we expose them, we're not just taking down Solvista. We're exposing the system they've built to control everything." A dangerous plan? The team devised a plan that would require every ounce of their courage and ingenuity. They would infiltrate a high-level summit hosted by the shadowy figures behind Solvista, a gathering disguised as an international economic forum. With the help of Sarah Keller's extensive network, they secured false identities, forged credentials, and a covert communication system. Barron would attend the summit as an investor, Linda as a tech consultant, and Marcus as his security detail. "This is the most dangerous thing we've ever done," Marcus said as they prepared. "If they catch us—" "That's easy for you to say, and we understand," Barron interrupted. "We've come too far to stop now." Inside the lion's den. The summit was held in a luxurious, heavily guarded resort in the Swiss Alps. The air was crisp, the scenery breathtaking, but the tension was palpable. As Barron and his team mingled with the elite, they quickly realized the scale of their opposition. CEOs, politicians, and military officials from around the world were in attendance, exchanging handshakes and veiled threats. During a keynote presentation, Barron's suspicions were confirmed. The speaker, a powerful billionaire with ties to Solvista, outlined a vision for the future that revolved around technological dominance, resource control, and suppressing dissent. "This isn't a forum," Barron whispered to Linda. "It's a war room." The upload. While Barron and Marcus kept the attendees distracted, Linda slipped away to a secure area. Her goal: upload the final cache of evidence to a global whistleblower platform, ensuring it would be distributed instantly to media outlets, human rights organizations, and independent journalists. The stakes were enormous. Solvista's security team was on high alert, and the slightest misstep could end in disaster. As Linda worked, her hands trembling with adrenaline, a security guard entered the room. She froze, holding her breath as the guard scanned the area. Just as he approached her hiding spot, Marcus's voice crackled through her earpiece. "We've got a situation. Stay hidden." A decoy. Back in the main hall, Marcus had deliberately caused a commotion, drawing attention away from Linda's location. Barron quickly joined in, pretending to argue with another attendee. The distraction worked. Security personnel rushed to the scene, giving Linda the time she needed to complete the upload. "Why, it's done," Linda whispered into her mic. "We're live." "There's all fire." The escape. As the summit descended into chaos, Barron and his team made their way to the exit. But their escape wasn't easy. The organizers quickly realized what had happened and ordered the resort locked down. Barron and Marcus fought their way through, using every skill they had learned over the past months. Linda, carrying the hard drive with the original files, was their priority. In a final desperate dash, they reached a helicopter arranged by Sarah's network. Bullets whizzed past as they took off, leaving the resort and their pursuers behind. The aftermath. The leaks were a global bombshell. Names, faces, and financial trails connected the dots between Solvista and some of the world's most powerful individuals. Protests erupted on every continent, demanding accountability and systemic change. Governments crumbled under the weight of public outrage. New leaders emerged, promising reforms and transparency. But for Barron, the fight wasn't just about dismantling a corrupt system, it was about building something better. A new beginning. Months later, Barron stood on a stage addressing a crowd of thousands. Behind him, a banner read, "The world we deserve." "Finally, this journey has shown us the worst of humanity," he said. "But it's also revealed our strength, our resilience, and our capacity for change. The system won't change overnight, but together we've proven that it can be challenged and defeated." The crowd erupted in applause, their faces filled with hope. As Barron stepped off the stage, Linda and Marcus joined him. "What now?" Marcus asked. Barron smiled. "Now we rebuild, not just systems, but trust, community, and a future we can be proud of." And with that, they walked into the next chapter of their lives, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.